Israeli forces were caught on camera arresting 5 Palestinian children for picking vegetables. I'm going to play this clip for you. It is disturbing, though there is no overt violence. It's still disturbing to see these officers take these children away. And I'll get into more details about what went on here and who's speaking out against it after this clip.
زانين بقلال متنحلين محافات معون بقلال متنحلين محافات معون الو راك يا نديم ما زين تتفرشوا ترى متبيش ترى متبيش ترى متبيش يا اخ عطشرين يا نديم بقلال كتفوك عوب يا ابو صعيم خيالين ابو صعيم خيال شو يا ابو شع אתם פושעים, אתם עושים עבודת פשע. בגלל מתנחלים מחפת מעון. بس يجي ابوه بس يجي ابوه شوفوا يجي ابوه هو اجا انا ما بدي
Now, this video was shared by Ben White, journalist Ben White, with the caption, "Earlier today, 5 Palestinian children, reportedly aged 8 to 12, were detained by Israeli army soldiers for picking wildflowers at the behest of Israeli settlers whose very presence in occupied territory is illegal." And the video comes from B'Tselem, an Israeli-based human rights organization. Now, let me give you a little more detail here from Al Jazeera on what went on. So, footage shot earlier shows the children gathering akub, a plant similar to artichoke, when 2 masked settlers emerged from a grove of trees near the illegal settler outpost of Havat Mon. The outpost is located near Masafar Yada, a collection of about 19 Palestinian hamlets. The area is a frequent target of assaults by the Israeli military and settlers. Now, just the obvious here. First of all, this is, of course, disputed land, but they could have just escorted these kids out of the area. If the problem is them being there on that land, just escort them off. But no. Instead, what happened? The children, whose ages range from 8 to 13, were held for about 5 hours at a police station in the settlement of Kiryat Arba, according to Gabi Lasky, a human rights lawyer who is representing them. The 2 eldest, who are 12 and 13, were ordered to return next week for more questioning, as under Israeli military law, they are deemed old enough to face charges. So, it's not enough to just arrest them. It's not enough to hold them for 5 hours. No, 2 of the kids, 12 and 13, may actually face charges for picking vegetables in a field on disputed territory that doesn't even necessarily belong to Israel. And by the way, this is not at all rare. According to the Defense for Children International, Israel prosecutes between 500 and 700 Palestinian children in military courts each year. Prisoners' rights group Adamir has said 140 Palestinian children are currently imprisoned by Israel. 140 children. Havat Mon is one of dozens of settler outposts established without Israeli government authorization, in addition to some 130 officially recognized settlements in the occupied West Bank. The settlements, which range from remote hilltop outposts to full-fledged towns, are home to nearly 500,000 Israelis. This is completely ridiculous and really doesn't even need much explanation. You saw what went on there. Kids picking vegetables in a field, taken away by Israeli forces, held for 5 hours, and now 2 of them potentially facing charges. Dylan Williams here, who is a journalist senior vice president for jstreet.org, which is a pro-Israeli, pro-peace group trying to work to mold U.S.-Israeli relations to a more democratic place where they actually recognize Palestinian rights. Dylan Williams tweets out here, harassment of young Palestinian children by Israeli settlers and their frequent arrest and detention by Israeli forces comprises a pattern of international law violations and may also constitute repeated violations of U.S. law to the extent U.S.-sourced military equipment is used. So this is the actual law breaking going on here. The fact that these sorts of arrests happen all the time, and that violates international law. And on top of that, maybe violating U.S. law to the extent that U.S.-sourced military equipment is being used in this process. Last thing here, the Palestinians view all settlements as illegal and a major obstacle to their goal of bringing about an independent state, including the West Bank, which Israel captured in the 1967 war. The international community also largely views the settlements as illegal as an impediment to peace. So that, of course, is at the heart of this issue. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, let's just say, let's even just pretend that international law is on the side of Israel here. Let's pretend that this is their land. To arrest these children, hold them for 5 hours, and potentially push further charges on a 12 and 13-year-old over picking vegetables in a field. You tell me who's on the right side of history.